If you've ever wondered what it looks like when karma shows up in real time, start right here. A sleek corporate lobby, glass walls, marble floors, champagne, laughter, awards banners. And then, a sound that does not belong in a place like this. Not a clink of crystal, not a drop tray, a slap, open palm against aged skin. The crack ricochets off steel beams and glass, and 200 conversations die mid-word like someone slashed the soundtrack. An elderly woman in a simple navy dress stumbles back a step. Her silver hair swings across her face, one thin hand flies to her cheek. Already, a red print blooms across her 78-year-old skin like a brand. Something small and white arcs through the air. Her pearl earring hits the marble and spins, catching the overhead lights, then vanishes under the heel of a passing waiter who has no idea he just stepped on 40 years of history. The man who slapped her stands with his hand still raised. Tailored black suit. Red silk tie, like a slash of blood. Name badge glinting. Ethan Harrington, regional manager. His mouth curls in disgust as he looks down at her. "You don't belong here," he says, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Get out." The band's piano player lifts his hands off the keys. Champagne flutes hover in midair. Somewhere near a decorative ice sculpture, a woman gasps so hard she coughs. The old woman's name is Eleanor Waters. At this moment, almost nobody in the room knows who she is. They see old. They see weak. They see irrelevant. What they don't see is that she is the ghost in the foundation of this building. Her hand trembles on her cheek. Not because she's afraid. Not because she's fragile. Because something has been building inside her quietly for exactly 7 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days, and that slap just pulled the pin. 30 feet away, a junior accountant named Marcus freezes with a canopy halfway to his mouth. He's 26, overworked, underpaid, and smart enough to feel when he's standing inside a moment people will talk about later. He slides his phone from his pocket. His thumb hovers. Record. A red dot flickers to life. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees other people doing the same. One phone becomes 5. 5 becomes 15. Soft chimes mark cameras going live, feed starting, evidence being quietly collected. Now the room has 2 kinds of people. The ones staring at Eleanor, and the ones staring at Ethan, because they've worked for him long enough to know there's a lot under the surface. Have you ever met someone so powerful they never needed to tell you they were in charge? The kind of boss whose name in your inbox makes your stomach drop? Ethan is that person, at least he thinks he is. What he doesn't know is that the woman he just hit could erase his entire career with a single phone call. And here's the part that will turn everything you think you know about power upside down. She could have did it months ago. She chose to wait. She chose to watch. Because real power doesn't panic. It takes notes. Eleanor straightens, joints protesting. A younger woman in a black dress, Ethan's assistant Heather, rushes forward, eyes wide. "Ma'am, let me." Eleanor lifts one hand, palm outward. The gesture is small. Somehow, it stops Heather in her tracks. She turns her head slowly and looks up at Ethan. Her blue eyes meet his. 1 second. 2. 3. It's not a submission. It's measurement. And it is going to haunt him for the rest of his life. Then she bends, picks up nothing because the pearl is gone, closes her empty hand around the memory, and walks toward the glass doors. No apology. No argument. No tears for the cameras. Just an old widow, walking away from her own company's annual celebration while the man who hit her smirks behind her back. If you were standing in that lobby, phone in hand, watching your boss slap an old woman, what would you do? Pretend you saw nothing or hit record and risk being part of the fallout? Tell me in the comments, because your answer says a lot about how you see power. The timestamp on Marcus's video reads 8:47 p.m. In exactly 9 minutes, at 8:56 p.m., Ethan Harrington is going to lose everything he thinks makes him powerful. He just doesn't know yet that his biggest mistake tonight wasn't the slap. It was underestimating the woman he slapped. So what do you think hurts more for a man like Ethan? The sting on his hand or the consequences he can't see coming? 8 hours earlier, Ethan Harrington smiled at himself in a mirror and believed his own lie. The day of the gala started for him at 5:15 a.m. in a Tribeca penthouse overlooking the city. Dimmed lights, imported stone, a bathroom bigger than most people's apartments. He stood there in his towel, practicing. The humble smile. The confident nod. The I'm listening but also 10 steps ahead of you squint. Under my leadership, he told his reflection, Avalon's Northeast Division has broken every projection. And tonight, we celebrate my vision. He tested another version. Under my guidance. Too soft. Back to leadership. The truth? He'd been in the job for 18 months. He hadn't built this machine. He'd inherited it. But arrogance has a way of editing your memory. By 7:30 a.m., his company-paid driver had him in a black Mercedes slicing through traffic, while Ethan scrolled through articles about top 40 executives under 40 and imagined his face on the next cover. He arrived at headquarters to find Heather waiting at the elevator, coffee in hand, eyes carefully avoiding him for more than 2 seconds at a time. Gala checklist, he said, striding past her. Walk and talk. She hurried to keep pace. Venue confirmed. Catering on site at 4. Guests RSVP'd at 212. Your speech uploaded to the teleprompter. The band has your entrance song. My entrance song, he said, savoring the phrase. Remind me. My way, she replied. Sinatra. Of course it was. And security. Standard, she said. Pre-registered guest list. IDs checked at the door. Good, he said, pausing at his glass office door to pin her with a look. No surprises tonight. The board will be watching. I'm in line for regional director. This evening is about control. Control. That is Ethan's religion. Control budgets. Control narratives. Control people. 3 months earlier, a senior accountant named Dorothy Chin had noticed expenses that didn't make sense. Consulting fees to vendors no one had met. Large travel reimbursements with no itineraries. She scheduled a meeting with HR. By Friday of that week, she was walking out with a cardboard box while security watched, told to sign a non-disclosure agreement she'd barely had time to read. Performance issues, Ethan told anyone who asked. She couldn't handle the pace. Her performance reviews for 22 years had been spotless. But fear is a better shield than facts, and Ethan wrapped himself in it. He spent the rest of the afternoon rehearsing his speech, then his smile, then his laugh. By evening, he was in the Peton Building's lobby, the center of a universe he believed revolved around him. He never noticed the elderly woman who stood near the back wall that afternoon, watching employees fly in and out of the elevators. He never saw her ride the elevator to each floor, blending in with visitors, quietly noting which offices were closed, which names were missing from doors. He never knew that she stood outside his own glass door for 17 minutes, reading his nameplate, listening through the wall, as Heather ordered security to escort some pushy old lady out of the building, on Mr. Harrington's orders. He certainly didn't realize that the old lady heard every word. Back in the lobby, right after the slap, Ethan rolls his shoulders, smoothing his dark hair with the same hand that struck flesh minutes before. There's still a faint smear of foundation on his palm. He wipes it off on a cloth napkin, disgusted. See that, he murmurs to a circle of junior managers who are desperately trying to look amused instead of nauseous. That's how you handle a problem. Quick. Firm. No drama. Across the room, Heather's tablet vibrates in her hands. She glances at the screen, sees something that makes her skin go cold, and starts tapping furiously. Her search results load. A grainy photograph from 1987. A younger woman in front of a small brick office. A sign that reads Avalon Consulting. Pearl earrings. The name, Eleanor Waters, founder and CEO. Heather looks up at the closed glass doors Eleanor just walked through. Her boss didn't slap some random grandmother. He laid hands on the woman who started all of this. If you're feeling that twist in your stomach right now, the one that says, he picked the wrong person this time, make sure you're subscribed. This is the kind of story we see through to the end, and what Eleanor is about to do next is exactly why you'll never look at harmless arrogance the same way again. The building hums pleasantly around them. Elevators ding. Distant laughter from guests who miss the scene. But on Eleanor's phone, outside those doors, a contact is lighting up that hasn't been touched in 3 years. Richard, board counsel. Ethan thinks the night is back under his control. He has no idea that the countdown has already started, and that, for the first time in his carefully curated career, he is not the one holding the stopwatch. When a man who's built his life on fear finally runs into someone who isn't afraid of him, what do you think breaks first? His reputation, his alliances, or his illusion of control? Cold air hits Eleanor's face like a second slap. It's November. The kind of city night where the wind whips around corners and steals your breath. She steps onto the sidewalk, the lobby's golden lights spilling out behind her like a scene she refuses to stay in. For a moment, she just stands there, palm pressed to her cheek, feeling the sting. It's not the worst pain she's ever felt. Not even close. "Ma'am," a voice says. "Are you all right?" The Peton's doorman, George, hustles over, his cap askew, worry etched into the deep grooves of his face. "Should I call someone? Security? An ambulance?" Eleanor looks up at him, really looks, and a memory clicks into place. "You're George," she says. "Started in '93, didn't it? Right before the East Wing renovation. Your boy broke his arm on the scaffolding 3 weeks in." His eyes go wide. "How do you?" "I signed the settlement check myself," she says. "You made a point of telling me you weren't angry." "Accidents happen, ma'am," you said. "The way you handled it told me everything about this place." Back then, he was 30-something. Now he's pushing 60 with bad knees and a loyalty you can't buy. "You're Mrs. Waters," he whispers. Asterisk the asterisk, Mrs. Waters. "Last time I checked," she says. He stares at the bruise on her cheek, color draining from his face. "Who did this?" "A man who thinks power means never having to say, 'I'm wrong,'" she replies. "George, I need your help." "Anything," he says instantly. For the next 15 minutes, she says, no one leaves this building. Not the guests. Not the executives. Especially not Ethan Harrington. Tell them there's a minor security check. Blame the city. Blame me. I don't care. Just keep them inside. George straightens to his full, slightly aching height. "Yes, ma'am." He strides back to the doors like a soldier to his post, murmuring to bellhops, gesturing to other staff, setting quiet resistance in motion. Eleanor turns her attention to her phone. She scrolls through her contacts until she reaches a name she hasn't touched since the day she retired. Richard Winters, general counsel and board member. 3 years ago, she handed him the keys to the legal engine of the company and stepped back, certain she'd earned the right to finally rest. She'd buried her husband, Henry. She'd buried their only son. She'd survived a heart attack and chemo and 2 economic crashes. Avalon was supposed to be her proof that all of that meant something. For a while, it ran just fine without her. Then, 8 months ago, the first letter arrived. No return address. No signature. 1 line typed on cheap paper. Ask about the Chin termination. Eleanor almost ignored it. But Tuesday afternoons have always been the heavy days, the days Henry used to tease her for ruining with real life, instead of their standing date nights. The day he died was a Tuesday. She couldn't shake the feeling. So she called Richard. "Find me everything on a Dorothy Chin," she'd said. "Performance reviews, HR filings, anything we have." The report that landed on her desk the next morning made her stomach knot. Dorothy had been flawless for 22 years. The only problem started when she flagged Ethan's expenses. 2 weeks later, another anonymous letter. Check expenses, March to June. She checked. They weren't just aggressive. They were illegal. Vendor payments that led nowhere. Luxury trips labeled as client outreach, with no clients present. A pattern that said one thing. This man thinks the rules don't apply to him. The next months blurred into a quiet investigation. Eleanor pulled old favors. She had outside auditors comb the books discreetly. She sat in coffee shops and listened to young employees complain about that psycho boss without ever saying who she was. And through all of it, she waited. She could have ended Ethan quietly with a single call to the board. But she wanted to see who else had helped him, who had looked the other way, who had believed they could trade integrity for comfort and never pay a price. She wasn't gathering gossip. She was loading a weapon. Now, standing on the sidewalk with a fresh bruise, she realizes the waiting is over. She taps Richard's name. The phone rings once. Twice. "Professional boredom, Eleanor," he answers, voice dry. "Please tell me you're about to fix that." "Hello, Richard," she says. "I'm invoking Article 7. Silence. He's known her long enough to know she doesn't say things lightly. "Article 7, all the emergency protocols?" he asks. Yes. You understand what that means, he says. Full founder authority. Board review later. Nuclear option now. He hit me in my own lobby, Richard, she says quietly. In front of our staff. In front of board members. And we both know that a slap is the smallest thing he's done wrong. There's a long exhale on the line. I'll notify the board and log the activation, he says. Operational control transfers to you in 4 minutes. 8:55 p.m. You'll be untouchable for a little while. 4 minutes is plenty, she says. She ends the call and checks the time. 8:51 p.m. She closes her eyes for a count of 3. Not to calm down. To focus. 3 seconds for anger. Then action. That's how she survived hostile takeovers and boardroom insults that would have broken a softer woman. She opens her eyes and looks back at the revolving doors. Inside, the man who thinks he owns this place is raising a toast. In 4 minutes, he's going to find out what actual ownership looks like. If you were Eleanor, silent for months, documenting every wrong, would you pull the trigger now or give him one last chance to walk away quietly? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I'm curious how much patience you think real justice should have. Because when she walks back through those doors, it won't just be about one slap. It'll be about every quiet decision that led to it. Is she about to overreact or save a company from a man who is slowly destroying it? When the revolving doors spin again, the entire lobby seems to hold its breath. Eleanor steps back inside, flanked by 4 people in dark suits with discreet earpieces. Not hotel staff. Her staff. The private security firm she's trusted since the 90s, back when she first learned that in business, sometimes your best allies don't wear your logo. Conversations stutter. Forks pause halfway to lips. The jazz band stops mid-note. Every eye swings toward the bruise on her cheek. Every camera in every phone silently reorients. Ethan notices the change in the air a second too late. He turns, champagne in hand, annoyance already on his face. I thought I told someone to get her out of. No one is escorting Mrs. Waters anywhere, says the lead security officer, stepping between them. Her badge is subtle but real. Ethan blinks. Mrs. who? Waters, Eleanor says. As in Avalon Waters. As in your paycheck. It's almost funny, the way his expression shifts. First confusion, then disbelief, then a flicker of fear, so fast most people would miss it. But Eleanor doesn't. She built a multi-million-dollar enterprise reading expressions like that. She walks forward until there's barely 6 feet between them. The security detail hangs back just enough to show they're there for her, not him. I don't care if you're the cleaning lady or the Queen of England, Ethan says, grasping for the swagger that's deserting him. You crashed a private event. You put your hands on. I did not put my hands on you, she says calmly. You, however, did strike me. In my own lobby. In front of at least 3 members of the board and half the staff. A hush ripples through the room as people realize this is not going to be smoothed over with an HR email. From the back, a voice clears loudly. She is correct. All heads turn. Board member Patterson steps forward, his face ashen. I saw it, he says. So did Ms. Khan. So did Mr. Liu. Both executives nod reluctantly. Board presence confirmed. Gross misconduct witnessed. Eleanor reaches into her clutch and pulls out a folded document. It's worn around the edges from being carried, just in case. Article 7 was always a break glass in case of emergency clause. Tonight, the glass is broken. This, she says, unfolding it, is Article 7, Section 3 of Avalon's charter. Drafted after a hostile takeover attempt in 1994. It states that in the event of gross misconduct by executive leadership witnessed by a member of the board, the founding shareholder may assume immediate operational control pending formal review. Her voice is not loud. She doesn't need to shout. Every syllable lands like a gavel. As of 8:55 p.m., she continues, glancing at her watch, Article 7 is active. I am no longer merely your founder. I am, once again, your acting head of operations. She looks up, straight into Ethan's eyes. And my first act, she says, is to terminate your employment, Mr. Harrington. For that reason. There's a tiny beat where reality seems to wobble around him. He laughs. It's high, a little too sharp. You can't fire me, he scoffs. You don't even come in anymore. I run this division. The board needs me. The numbers, she cuts in, are exactly why you're not walking out of here with a severance package. She gestures to the room. For 8 months, I've been watching this place, she says. From the outside, from the inside, through the eyes of people like Marcus there. She nods at the stunned junior accountant and Dorothy and Heather. Heather jolts slightly at the sound of her name. I've listened to the fear, Eleanor continues. The stories about people being punished for telling the truth. The stories about you stealing credit, stealing time, and more. She could say stealing money right now, but that part of the war belongs to the DA. Tonight, this battlefield is about culture. If leadership is based on fear, she says, it's not leadership. It's abuse. You built an empire on the belief that nobody above you would notice or care. That people like me were tired, checked out, too old to see what was happening. She folds the document back up. You were wrong. If moments where the bully finally realizes he's not the biggest predator in the room hit something deep in you, hit subscribe right now. This is where we tell the full story, not just the viral clip. And trust me, what happens to Ethan after tonight is part of the justice you'll want to see. Security steps in on either side of him now, not asking this time. His voice pitches up. This is insane. You can't just walk in here and... I can, she says. And I have. Your access is revoked effective immediately. Your key card will no longer work. IT is disabling your accounts as we speak. You are to collect nothing from your office. A third party will inventory it. He looks around, expecting anyone to step in. Jerome Bailey, the CFO who has been signing whatever Ethan put in front of him, stares at the floor. Denise Watkins, head of HR, presses her lips together, saying nothing. The junior managers who laughed at his jokes 15 minutes ago suddenly found the ceiling very interesting. Fear, he realizes, is a one-way street. It doesn't flow back up when you need it. Security takes his elbows. This isn't over, he spits as they turn him toward the elevators. You'll regret this. You're just an old woman who doesn't understand how the game is played anymore. Eleanor watches him go. You're right, she says softly. I never saw it as a game. The elevator doors close on his furious face. The lobby exhales. But the game is far from over, for him, or for everyone who helped him. Because now that the top of the rod is cut off, what about the roots underneath? The elevator doors slide shut with a soft hiss, and just like that, the man who thought he owned the room is gone. What's left behind is tension. It hangs over the lobby like a low cloud. Servers stand frozen with trays. The band quietly packs up. Employees look at one another, wondering if clapping is appropriate after a public execution. Eleanor doesn't make them guess. She steps into the center of the marble floor, sets her clutch down on a cocktail table, and looks around. Those of you who came here tonight expecting a celebration, she says, deserve an explanation. A dry laugh bubbles up from somewhere in the back. It breaks the spell just enough that people start edging closer, forming a loose semicircle around her. First, she says, let me apologize to you. That gets their attention. I stepped back from daily operations 3 years ago, she continues. I believe the systems we built together would be strong enough to survive without me watching every corner. I was wrong, and some of you paid for my mistake. She lets that sit. Faces flicker. The quiet programmer in the back who saw a colleague bullied and said nothing. The mid-level manager who's been swallowing his disgust for months. The receptionist who cried in the bathroom after Ethan yelled at her in front of clients. For 8 months, Eleanor says, I've been receiving anonymous letters. Detailed, precise, from someone inside this building who understood exactly how rot spreads, quietly, through people who are too scared to speak up. Her eyes find Heather. The young woman freezes. Tonight, I found out who wrote them, Eleanor says. Heather, join me, please. Heather moves like she's heading to a firing squad. 2 years ago, you took a job as Mr. Harrington's assistant, Eleanor says. Since then, you've watched him destroy at least one good person's career. You've heard the way he talks about the people he thinks are beneath him. And instead of quitting, instead of licking his boots, you chose a third option. Heather swallows. I didn't know what else to do, she says. HR was... Denise kept telling me the decisions came from above. The board only saw his presentations. I thought if anyone could fix it, it would be you. You risked your job, Eleanor says. For the sake of people he was treated like trash. Heather's eyes shine. She's expecting the next words to be, and that was reckless. Instead, thank you, Eleanor says. Murmurs ripple. Dorothy Chin lost her position because she did her job too well, Eleanor says, raising her voice so it carries. She saw something wrong in the numbers and tried to correct it. For that, she was labeled difficult and not a team player. She turns, pinning Denise Watkins with a look. HR protected the wrong person. Again and again. Denise's face reddens. I have a list, Eleanor says, holding up a thin stack of papers. Names of those who signed off on false expenses. Names of those who rubber-stamped retaliatory firings. Names of those who knew about harassment complaints and buried them. She doesn't read the names. Not yet. Those of you on this list, she says, will receive emails by midnight. You have until Monday at 9 a.m. to submit your resignation. If you do so, your references will be neutral. If you do not, you will be terminated for cause, and the truth will follow you wherever you apply. A wave of panic, barely contained, moves through a certain corner of the room. Those of you not on the list, Eleanor says, softening, I need you. This company needs you. I didn't build Avalon to be a throne for tyrants. I built it to prove that integrity, patience, and hard work can outrun arrogance and cruelty. She looks back at Heather. I can't promise it will be easy, she says. We're about to remake a culture. That takes time. Heather nods, voice small but firmer. What do you need from me? I'm offering you a choice, Eleanor says. You can stay in your current role, or you can come work directly with me as an analyst. Help me rebuild. Help ensure no one like Ethan rises this far again. Heather's breath catches. Are you serious? She whispers. Eleanor smiles faintly. I don't make unserious offers. Around them, people watch, absorbing the new rules. This is a place where speaking up gets you promoted, not punished. If you've ever been in Heather's position, seeing something wrong and not knowing whether telling the truth would save your job or end it, what would you have done? Be honest and tell me in the comments. Would you write the letters or walk away? Heather lifts her chin. I'll work for you, she says. I want to fix this. I don't want to just survive it. Good, Eleanor replies. You start Monday. The relief and pride on Heather's face send a ripple of something like hope through the crowd. For the first time all night, people don't just feel scandal. They feel possibility. But firing a bad manager and promoting a brave assistant is only the beginning. Upstairs on Eleanor's desk, there's a file that turns tonight's drama into something much bigger than office politics. Because if slapping your founder in public costs you your job, what should stealing from her cost you? By the time the sun comes up over Manhattan, the story is no longer just office gossip. It's national news. Clips from Marcus's video run on loop. The slap, the hush, the revelation that the old woman is actually the company's founder the moment she invokes Article 7 and fires Ethan on the spot. Commentators call it the most satisfying corporate takedown of the year. Think pieces pop up overnight. Why we're all cheering for the slapped widow CEO. What happens when real power wakes up? Integrity versus arrogance, the Avalon incident. While talk shows argue about workplace aggression and elder abuse, Eleanor sits at her kitchen table in a robe, sipping black coffee and spreading documents across the worn wood. Her cheek is a fading bruise now, shades of purple and yellow under careful makeup. The pain has moved lower into her chest, where years of love, effort, and disappointment live. She opens the folder marked Forensic Audit, Avalon Northeast Division. Inside, charts, bank statements, traced wire transfers. The outside firm she hired quietly 3 weeks ago did its job well. They followed the money from Avalon's accounts to a series of shell companies that exist only on paper. From there, to an offshore account in Ethan's name. Total, just under $2 million. Over 18 months. He wasn't just a bully. He was a thief. Real power could have kept this in-house. Settled. Silenced. Saved the stock price a temporary dip. But the older Eleanor gets, the less interested she is in cosmetic fixes. She picks up her phone and dials the number Detective Washington gave her the day before. NYPD Financial Crimes, Detective Washington speaking. It's Eleanor again, she says. I have the full audit. And I think we've crossed the line from internal discipline to felony. He doesn't sound surprised. To be honest, Mrs. Waters, we were already moving that direction, he says. We received an anonymous tip about Avalon 6 weeks ago. Your call just puts a name and a face to the victim. Anonymous tip. That phrase again. Can you come in this morning? He asks. The DA is very interested. Eleanor glances at the clock. It's barely 9. I'll be there in an hour, she says. At the precinct, under the hum of harsh fluorescent lights, she lays out 7 months of work on a cheap laminate table. Most people in your position don't do this, the detective says as they go over the evidence. They protect the rainmakers. Settle quietly. Call it a misunderstanding. I didn't build my life just to keep liars comfortable, she replies. If integrity only matters when it's cheap, it's not integrity. He smiles. The anonymous tipster will be relieved to have you on their side. On the ride home, her phone buzzes. Richard, the DA's office called me, he says. They're moving fast. They want to file charges before the news cycle shifts. This isn't just about your company anymore, Eleanor. It's a public example. Good, she says. After they hang up, another notification pings. A number she doesn't recognize. She opens the message. You think firing me is enough? You humiliated me. You think you're a hero. This isn't over, asterisk asterisk. No name. I don't need one. She deletes the message without replying. Let him scream into the void. Real power is not replying to rage texts when you're holding someone's future in a file folder. If stories where justice doesn't stop at you're fired, but follows right through to here are the charges, are the ones you want to see more of, hit subscribe. This is where we follow arrogance all the way to its consequences, not just the part that fits into a 30-second viral clip. Eleanor turns her attention to another name written on a yellow sticky note by her phone. Dorothy Chin, former senior accountant. At the bottom of the forensic report, a few lines stand out. Initial irregularities flagged by internal staff member D, Chin prior to termination. She dials the number Richard found. The phone rings. Once. Twice. 3 times. Hello. Miss Chin, Eleanor says. This is Eleanor Waters. There's a sharp inhale on the other end. I wasn't sure you actually existed, Dorothy says. I mean, I knew you did, but no one like you ever calls someone like me. I owe you more than a call, Eleanor says. I believe they fired you for trying to protect what I built. And I'd like to meet you. Today, if possible. Silence. Then, there's a coffee shop on 3rd and Mercer, Dorothy says slowly. 1 hour. 1 hour, Eleanor replies. As she hangs up, she realizes something important. For every arrogant executive who thinks they're untouchable, there's at least one person like Dorothy quietly doing the right thing and paying the price. The question is, can those people be brought back? And if they can, is it enough to undo the damage one man's arrogance did? The coffee shop on 3rd and Mercer smells like burnt espresso and baked sugar. It buzzes with students, freelancers, and people pretending to work while scrolling social media. Dorothy Chin sits in the corner booth, hands wrapped around a chipped mug, watching the door like she might still decide to run. When Eleanor walks in, bruised, composed, carrying a leather folder instead of a laptop, every head doesn't turn. But Dorothy's does. She stands. Mrs. Waters, she says. Eleanor, please, comes a reply. Up close, Dorothy is younger than Eleanor expected. Mid-40s. Sharp eyes behind smudged glasses. The posture of someone who's been hit hard and is still deciding whether to get back up. I wasn't sure you'd actually come, Dorothy admits as they sit. I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet, Eleanor says. Dorothy huffs a small laugh. When the woman whose company you gave 22 years to calls and says, let's talk about the man who ruined your career, you rearrange your morning. They sit in a brief, awkward silence. I owe you an apology, Eleanor says first. You tried to protect Avalon. I wasn't watching closely enough to protect you. Dorothy's jaw tightens. With all due respect, Mrs. Eleanor, you built the system that let someone like him rise. HR reported to someone. The CFO signed what he put in front of him. It wasn't just one man. I know, Eleanor says quietly. That's why I'm not just firing one man. Dorothy studies her for a moment, searching for spin, finding none. I saw the video, she says. The slap. The way you fired him. I replayed it too many times. Cathartic. Eleanor asks. A little, Dorothy admits. But also terrifying. Because I keep thinking, if it hadn't been you, if it had just been some random older woman, he would have gotten away with it. Again. That's why people like you and Heather matter, Eleanor says. You did the right thing when no one in power was watching. That's real strength. Dorothy looks down at her mug. When HR called me in, I thought it was to thank me, she says. Or at least to ask more questions. Instead, Denise read from a script. Performance issues. Not a good fit. She didn't even look at the evidence I brought. I've seen the file, Eleanor replies. I know you tried. Dorothy's voice cracks. I gave them my 20s. I'm in my 30s. Half my 40s. I missed birthdays, anniversaries for spreadsheets and audits. And in the end, they tossed me like garbage because it was easier than confronting the golden boy. Easier in the short term, Eleanor says. Much more costly now. She opens her folder and slides a document across the table. Internal audit, proposed reorganization, Dorothy reads. Her eyes flick up. What is this? It's a job description, Eleanor says. I need someone I can trust to make sure this never happens again. Someone who knows the numbers better than anyone and knows what it costs to tell the truth. Head of Internal Audit, reporting directly to me. Dorothy stares. I don't know if I can go back there, she says. Those hallways will be different, Eleanor interrupts. Not overnight. But with you and Heather helping me, we can cut out the rest of the rot. Dorothy swallows. Heather, the assistant. She was the one sending you letters. Yes. That kid had more courage than half the executive floor, Dorothy mutters. Exactly why she's not fetching coffee anymore, Eleanor says. She's going to be vice president of employee relations. If you come back, she'll be your ally. Not your boss. Dorothy looks down at the job description again. Same pay, she asks. It's half a joke, half a test. More, Eleanor says. Back pay for the months you were gone, benefits restored, and a very public apology when you're ready for it. Silence stretches. Around them, baristas call out orders. Milk froths. A nearby table laughs at a meme. Inside this booth, something heavier moves. If I say no, Dorothy asks quietly. Then I thank you for what you've already done, Eleanor says. And I go find someone else. But I'll always know the company lost one of its best because we didn't protect you when it mattered. Dorothy lets out a slow breath. I swore I would never set foot in that building again, she says. But the idea of you in there alone with those jackals. A small, reluctant smile tugs at her mouth. Fine, she says. One last fight. Eleanor smiles back. Welcome home, Miss Chin. If you'd been burned like Dorothy, given everything to a place that tossed you aside for doing the right thing, would you take that second chance or walk away forever? Tell me in the comments what you'd do, because that choice is harder than it sounds. They spend the next hour sketching plans on napkins. Anonymous reporting channels that skip compromised managers. Segregated duties so no one person can push through dubious payments. Mandatory ethics training isn't a joke. They also talk about something else Eleanor found in the HR files, a series of harassment complaints. 12 women over 18 months. All dismissed. All involving Ethan. That's not just a bad apple, Dorothy says. That's a whole rotten crate. Which is why we're not just auditing money, Eleanor replies. We're auditing culture. Monday morning is coming, and with it, an all-hands meeting that will decide whether Avalon becomes a cautionary tale, or a blueprint for how to take a company back from arrogance and build it on integrity again. Monday, 8:57 a.m. The largest conference room at Avalon is packed. Employees spill into the hallway, cluster around screens in overflow rooms, and crowd the back wall. There's no jazz band, no catering. Just stale coffee and the weight of anticipation. At 9 a.m. sharp, the doors at the front open. Eleanor walks in. No spotlight, no fanfare. Just an old woman in a well-cut charcoal suit, walking like she owns the place. Because she does. The murmurs die instantly. Thank you for coming, she says, stepping up to the podium. Nomik. She's never needed one. I know the last 3 days have been eventful. A dry chuckle ripples through the room. I want to start with what you already know, she continues. On Friday night, your regional manager struck me in the lobby of this building. In front of staff, in front of board members, in front of cameras. No one looks away from her face. As of that moment, she says, I invoked Article 7 and terminated his employment. Over the weekend, 7 more executives resigned or were removed for conduct that violated everything this company is supposed to stand for. A wave of whispers. 7 is more than most people expected. I did not come here to gloat, Eleanor says. I came here to take responsibility. That silences them again. I stepped back 3 years ago, she says. I trusted that the culture we built together would be strong enough to survive without me. I was wrong. Some of you suffered for that. You lost mentors. You lost your job. You lost faith in this place. Her gaze sweeps the room. No one feels unseen. I can't undo all of that, she continues. But I can do this, rebuild what we broke. And I will not do it alone. She gestures to the side. Most of you know Dorothy Chin, she says. You were told she had performance issues. That was a lie. Dorothy steps into view. The room reacts, surprised, pleased, a murmur of she's back. Dorothy noticed irregularities in our finances, Eleanor says. She tried to stop them. For that, she was pushed out. As of today, she is head of internal audit, reporting directly to me. If numbers don't make sense, she and her team will find out why. Dorothy nods once, steady. And this, Eleanor continues beckoning, is Heather Monroe. Heather emerges, cheeks pink, chin up. She spent 2 years absorbing the fallout of Ethan's behavior, Eleanor says. She could have looked away. Instead, she sent me detailed letters, at great personal risk, when she saw things going wrong. That is integrity. A ripple of respect moves through the crowd. As of today, Heather is Vice President of Employee Relations, Eleanor says. Her job is to make sure your voices reach leadership before problems become scandals. If you see harassment, fraud, bullying, her office is where you go. And you will not be punished for telling the truth. If seeing these kinds of transformations, where the quiet, decent people finally get the power to change things, hits something personal for you, hit subscribe. Around here, we don't just rage about injustice. We follow the people who fix it. Let me be clear, Eleanor says. Avalon is not going to be perfect. No company is. People make mistakes. But there is a difference between a mistake and a pattern of cruelty. We will not tolerate the latter. Not from managers. Not from executives. Not from anyone. She takes a breath. Some of you are wondering about the legal side, she adds. This morning, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office formally opened a financial crimes case against Mr. Harrington. Evidence suggests he embezzled nearly $2 million. Avalon is cooperating fully. We are the victim, not the accomplice. A collective exhale. Vindication. Anger. Relief. If you have information about questionable payments, vendors you've never heard of, or harassment you were told to forget, she says, speak to Dorothy or Heather. You will be heard. You will be protected. Hands go up. Questions spill out. What about Denise? Will we be audited too? Is my job safe if I worked under him? Eleanor answers as many as time allows. Denise has resigned. Jerome is cooperating and under review. Departments will be evaluated, not purged. No one will be fired for being afraid in the past, but being complicit going forward is a choice. After an hour, she closes with this. Power is not a right, she says. It's a responsibility. And after what I've seen, I will never hand it to someone who confuses fear with respect again. The room rises in a standing ovation. Not for the scandal, for the possibility that this place might finally live up to its mission statements. As the crowd begins to disperse, Eleanor's phone buzzes in her pocket. She glances at the screen. Unknown number. You think you've won. I'm not done, asterisk asterisk. She deletes it. He is done, whether he knows it or not. Because for the first time in a long time, the people who actually care about doing the right thing aren't whispering in hallways. They're running the show. But what happens when the man who lost everything finally has to stand in a courtroom and hear what the law thinks of his leadership? Courtrooms don't care about how sharp your suit is. They don't care how many people used to laugh at your jokes or how many followers you had on LinkedIn. They care about evidence. 6 months after the slap, Ethan Harrington stands in a Navy prison jumpsuit instead of his red tie, hands cuffed in front of him, listening as the charges are read. Count 1, grand larceny in the 2nd degree. Count 2, falsifying business records in the 1st degree. 12 counts in total. Some for money, some for tampering, some for trying to intimidate witnesses, like the texts he fired off to Eleanor in a rage before his lawyer confiscated his phone. He thought he was just venting. The DA called it a pattern of behavior. In the gallery, a few Avalon employees sit quietly. Dorothy, Heather, Marcus. They're not there to gloat. They're there to watch the system finish what Eleanor started. Ethan's lawyer argues that the culture encouraged aggressive risk-taking, that others benefited, that his client is being scapegoated. The forensic reports, Dorothy's testimony, and a string of ex-employees who described the fear he cultivated paint a different picture. A pattern of arrogance, a belief that rules were for other people, a trail of damage. The jury doesn't take long. Guilty. When the judge pronounces a sentence of 5 to 7 years, Ethan's shoulders slump for the first time anyone can remember. He's led away. The camera is following. The internet reacts with its usual mix of memes and moralizing, then moves on. Avalon doesn't. Inside the company, the ripple effects continue. Dorothy's team uncovers 3 smaller fraud attempts in the next quarter, nothing on Ethan's scale, but worrying enough. One mid-level manager tried to slip personal expenses through the system, thinking no one would notice. They did. He's given a choice, repay and resign or face charges. He chooses the door marked quiet exit. Another employee comes forward with a story of harassment from a supervisor who thought Ethan's departure meant the coast was clear. It doesn't. The supervisor is gone within a week. Heather's office door becomes a revolving one, not with complaints, but with people bringing ideas for improvement, asking honest questions, testing the new culture. Are we really serious about this? They ask. She answers the same way every time. Yes. And if you see me slip, you tell Eleanor. Real power doesn't get offended when you hold it accountable. It gets stronger. Outside of work, life goes on. Eleanor returns to her garden in the evenings, coaxing roses back from winter's grip. Sometimes she thinks about the slap. Not with anger, that burned out long ago. With a strange kind of gratitude. It was a terrible moment. Public. Humiliating. But woke her up. She'd been grieving on autopilot, letting Avalon drift, assuming good enough was good enough. Ethan's hand on her face hurt, but it also reminded her who she was. Not just a widow, not just a retired CEO, a builder, a protector. One afternoon, a letter arrives at her brownstone. The return address is a federal correctional facility upstate. She almost tosses it. Almost. Curiosity wins. Inside, in neat, tense handwriting. Mrs. Waters, I know you have no reason to read this. He writes about therapy programs, about examining patterns, about realizing that every time he chose fear over respect, arrogance over humility, he was building his own cage. He doesn't ask for forgiveness outright. He doesn't apologize for everything. But between the lines, there's something new. Not excuses. Awareness. So what, you might think? Too late. And you'd be right in a way. If someone like Ethan hurt you, cost you your job, your peace, would you want to hear from them later, or would you rather never see their name again? Tell me in the comments which one feels more like closure to you. Eleanor folds the letter carefully and places it in a drawer. She doesn't write back. His growth, if it's real, is his business now. Hers is still sitting in glass towers and cubicles across the city, in the hands of people who learned something very different from this whole saga. That patience is not passivity. That integrity is not weakness. That sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who can end your career in 9 minutes. But is the story really over? Or is there one last lesson to pull from everything that happened between the slap and the sentence? 1 year after the night everything changed, the Peton Building's lobby looks the same. Polished marble. Tall glass. A discreet plaque on the wall honoring the Waters family's donation that helped renovate it decades ago. But if you stand still for a moment, you can feel it. Something is different. New hires walk through the doors without the hunted look of people entering a place ruled by tantrums. Long-time employees stand a little straighter. HR's office door is open more often than it's closed, and not because people are being dragged in. In a sixth-floor boardroom, Eleanor sits at the head of the table, her pearl earrings, repaired after being scuffed that night, catching the morning light. The quarterly numbers are solid. Not rocket ship to the moon crazy. Steady. Honest. Sustainable. We're seeing lower turnover across departments, Dorothy reports. Employee engagement scores are up. And she allows herself a small smile. No mystery vendors this quarter. A chuckle travels around the table. Heather flips to a slide showing new policies, training completions, anonymous feedback trends. People are actually using the ethics hotline, she says. Not to weaponize it against colleagues. To report real issues. And they're seeing them addressed. The board members, some old allies, some recent additions, nod. Fear is gone. Respect, cautiously, is growing. After the meeting, alone in her office, Eleanor picks up a framed photograph from her desk. It's from 1987. A much younger, hair darker but eyes the same, stands outside their first tiny office, arm looped through Henry's. Their son, Michael, awkward in a too-big suit, beams between them. None of them knew then about the heartbreaks to come. Grief, she's learned, doesn't end. You just build around it. She sets the frame back down and looks out the window. Far uptown, behind cement walls, a man who once thought humiliation was something that only happened to other people wakes up to another day of the same routine. Eat, work, reflect, wait. In his narrow cell, Ethan scribbles in a worn notebook, charting patterns he should have seen years ago. He doesn't know if anyone will ever trust him with responsibility again. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe his second chance won't look like a corner office. Maybe it'll look like being a decent human being when there's nothing to gain. That's his story to write. Eleanor's is nearly complete. She's handed day-to-day operations to a new CEO, someone she and Dorothy and Heather vetted the hard way. She still comes in twice a week. Check the pulse. Walk the halls. Sometimes a new employee will catch her in the elevator, stare at the pearl earrings and whisper, "You're her, aren't you?" She smiles. Depends who you mean by her. The woman from the video, they say. The one who you know. The one who fired him, she corrects gently. In front of everyone. If you've stayed with this story all the way from that first slap to this moment, you already know why we tell it. Because real power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits. Watches. Collects receipts. And then at exactly the right time, it moves. If stories that prove integrity and patience can outlast arrogance and cruelty feel like something you need more of in your life, go ahead and hit subscribe. This is where we remind you that doing the right thing might cost you now, but it's the only thing that holds its value in the long run. As Eleanor steps into the elevator to head home, George the doorman tips his cap. "Evening, Mrs. Waters," he says. "Rose is doing all right." "Better than ever," she replies. "Took some pruning, but they're blooming." He grins. "Same as up here, then." She laughs, the sound echoing softly. In her garden that evening, she stands among the roses, some old, some newly planted. She thinks about the girl from Scranton who started a consulting firm at her kitchen table. She thinks about the woman who almost let everything she built drift into the hands of men who saw it as a toy. She thinks about a slap that hurt and healed. She touches one of the blossoms gently. "I took it back, Henry," she murmurs to the silent air. "And I left it better than I found it." That, in the end, is what real power is. Not the hand that strikes, but the hand that builds, rebuilds, and refuses to stay silent when cruelty masquerades as strength. So when life hands you a position, a platform, a voice, big or small, what are you going to do with it? Use it to make people smaller, or to build something that will still be standing long after you're gone.